So to help you understand the difference between reference and then value variables, we have a couple of programs that you guys are going to be making some modifications to. So the first one, you're going to create Chapter 8, Exercise 1. And you may want to zoom out, but you're going to want to copy this code. Maybe press Shift and down. Zoom out more. That should work. Going to copy the code and paste it into a new console application. And then you are going to save it and run it. And you'll notice that I did do some fun little color changes in here. And so you'll go ahead and run it. And as you're running it, you'll probably notice two things. The change in cost isn't updated, and the change in players is not being updated. And the reason is because the variables that are being passed to those methods are passed call by value, which means a copy is being passed. And then when the method changes the value, it's changing the copy instead of the original. And we are not returning and we're not storing the value that was changed. So to use the new value, we have to return it and then we have to store it. Okay, so for this method to actually work, we have to return a double value, and after it gets done making changes, we have to return cost. And then where that method gets called, we actually have to store the value that is being returned. Okay, and once you make that change, then you'll notice that the club and the cost are working the way they should. But the number of players is still not being updated properly. And we're going to fix that one a little different way. We are going to change the way the value is being passed, because right now it's being passed call by value, and we are going to change it to call by reference, so that instead of passing a copy, it's going to pass the real thing. So we are going to modify the change players method by adding the keyword ref or out before int players in the parameter list. Okay, so here's an example of what that change would look like. And then we're going to modify the method call by adding ref or out before the variable in the argument list. So if this was our call, we put the keyword ref there to match what we now added to our method signature. And once you do that, and you run the program, you will notice that all of the values are being properly updated. For this next one, the purpose is to illustrate the difference between passing an entire array and passing an element from the array. Because when you pass an entire array, it is called by reference. When you pass one element, it is called by value. So you're going to create a new program, Chapter 8, Exercise 2, and you are going to copy and paste the code. So you can kind of zoom out, longer program. It is rather lengthy. Just be happy you didn't have to type all that. You're going to copy and paste. Okay, and then there are a couple of things you're going to notice when you actually run the program. The add multiple player method works and the print method works. However, when you try to add a single player, that does not work. And if you try to change a single player, that does not work. The add multiple player method works because we're passing it an array, and it's being passed call by reference. And so when it's updated in the method, the actual values are being changed. However, when we are just updating a single player or we are changing a single player, we are passing one element from the array, and that is being passed call by value. And so the actual value that is in the array is not being changed. Okay, and that is the problem. So to fix this, you're going to change the add one player and the change one player methods so that they use reference variables. Okay, so we're going to change the method call in case one. So let's look over here. Here is our method call. And let's grab that and pull that back up. Hopefully, okay. I'm going to change the method call in case one to pass the entire players and dues arrays instead of one element. And then we're going to pass the counter variable as a reference. So this is how we're going to change it. So instead of indexing in, now we're passing the whole thing, and we are passing counter as a reference. And then, so we change the method call, and then we have to change the method itself so that it accepts the two arrays and the counter in its parameter list. Okay, so I'm giving you an example of what that new signature is going to look like. So if we come down here, okay, this is what it looks like now, and you are going to be changing it. Okay, then next you're going to modify the code in the method so that it stores the name in the P array. P is the name of the array. Okay, so you're going to change this into an array. We're calling it P, short for person, and the dues in the D array. And D is short for dues. And then your counter is going to be the index number. So at the bottom of this method, you are going to have to add one to the counter because we need to, keep track. And then because the counter is a reference variable, the new value will be retained in the main method. Okay, so here is an example of what you need to do when you are changing the add one player method. Okay, so counter was our index that we passed from main, and we are adding our new player, and now we are increasing it. Then you are going to modify code in the change one player, and basically you're going to modify it so that it's very similar to what was just done in add one player. You're going to modify the code in the method call to pass the players array, the dues array, and the change player integer value. This will be passed call by value, and that is okay. So when we change a player in this program, there is some logic in here where they actually have to enter the player number they want to change. Okay, and we read it in as a string, and then we make sure they have entered a number, And we also verify that the number is in the correct range so that we can use it as an index. And if they don't enter a number or it's not in the right range, we basically keep them in this little air loop until they enter a correct number. Okay. And then what we are doing is we are subtracting 1. And that is because when we index in, we start at 0. And then we are just kind of confirming, is player, and then we kind of subscript in or index in, grab the player's name. Is this the one you want to change? Yes or no? If they answer yes, then we call change one player. And we are, right now, we are just passing one element, which is pass call by value, and one set of dues. You have to change that. So you're going to have to change it so that it's similar to, what you did with add, where you actually pass the full array for players, you pass the full array for dues, and then you passed, I believe it was the counter. And in this case, you'll pass players, you'll pass dues, and then you're going to pass the player they want to change, that number. Okay, and so that is basically all it's telling you here. And then when you go down to make changes to the actual method itself, you're going to have to change this into an array. This is going to have to be an array, and then you'll have to do an integer for change player. Okay, and then you're going to have to adjust the code so that you are using change player to index in. And in this case, you will be adjusting the name and the dues. So after you make the changes, you are going to test the program to make sure it runs okay. You need to validate the dues entered in the add one player method and the change one player because that's numeric, and you need to make sure that they enter that correctly. And this is going to be very similar to the code that is already in add multiplayers. And then you will test the program to make sure it runs correctly, fix any errors, and submit the assignment. For the third exercise, so the first two should not take you that long because you have the majority of the code written. So you're just making modifications to it. This one, you are going to be creating your own game. And it's got to be some type of race with multiple characters racing, and you have multiple rounds. And you need to have at least 2 arrays or lists. You have to have a method for adding data to the arrays or the lists. You need to validate the data that you're entering. You have to have a method for repositioning the characters in the race, and some way of visually displaying the results from each round. So you need some kind of character that indicates how far each of the racers has traveled. And then you have to have some means of determining who wins. And then the results should be displayed. And I did videotape the running game. I'm going to put a link to it in here. And I do have an example of my game. So I thought it would be funny to have Santa doing a contest for reindeer games because Rudolph got hurt. So that's my scenario. So we've got battling reindeer. Anyway, so you guys can take a look at this if you want to download it and run it, you can. But you need to do something similar. But you can see I've got 3 arrays, one for the reindeer names, one for their position in the race, and then for each of the reindeer, I have a character, a print character that will represent them visually during each round of the race. Okay? And so I'm going to stay in this loop as long as there is not a winner. And I set winner to false. So immediately it's going to go into the loop and start, playing with the rounds of the game. And I've got the number of rounds currently set to 0. And I have a random object that I'm going to use to grab random numbers. So what I do, first of all, it's going to call this little method, which is going to add names to my name array. And it's going to add the print characters that represent the different reindeer. Okay, and then, you can see that I set the size at 6, but you could let the user determine how many. But I just decided that 6 reindeer is plenty for reindeer games. And so anyway, down in here, after I add the names of the reindeer contestants, it prints out round information, and all that method does, if I can find it, it's very short. Here it is. I changed the console colors and I just print out what round it is. That's literally all it does. Now you can see that I am passing a reference to rounds and I add 1 to it and then I print it. So rounds will be updated and that number is going to be permanently updated. So when we come back up here, rounds is still going to be 1. And then I call change positions. I'm passing the position array and my random object. So we come down to change positions, kind of a short little method. So we're bringing in a position array. We are bringing in a random object. And I basically am just looping through for the number of reindeer I have. And for each one, I am adding a number between 1 and 10 for their position. Okay, so after I change positions, I call round results. I'm passing it the position array, the names array, and the print character because I need to display where each of the reindeer racers is visually. Okay, so I'm going to come down here to round results. You can see I've got position, names, and print character. And I get into this little for loop. And so I write out the names for the name. And you'll notice I don't use write line, I use write. And I have a space because I want their print characters to display next to them. So I write out the name. And then I am kind of looping through the number in the position array. And it's going to print out that number of characters. Okay, and so like if I said Dasher was my first one and I made his character be a plus sign, and let's say there was a value of 6 in position, it would print out 6 plus signs. Okay, so it's going to print out whatever character, across, so you can visually see how far they are. So then after it goes through the values that are in position for Dasher, printing out plus signs along the way. Then it's going to come up and grab the next reindeer, which is probably Dancer. And let's say for Dancer, I made his print character an equal sign. So again, it's going to go through the position array. And so let's say there's a number 1 in there, then there's a number 6, and there's a number 7, but each time it's going to go ahead and print out those print characters for, the number of positions. Okay, so it's going to print out the names and it's going to print out the little characters. And that way we can visually see who's winning. Okay, so it's going to do that for every single reindeer. And if you haven't watched the video, I might pause this and just show you how that looks. Probably easier to visualize it that way. All right, so here are all my little reindeer. I entered their names and all of their little symbols, and here's round 1, and here is visually where they're at. Okay, so now if I press enter, I'm in round 2. You can see where they are at. We got round 3, round 4, round 5. So you can visually see how the reindeer are doing in the race. Okay, that is what this method does. Okay, and so it goes to this method after it changes position. Okay, so we change position, we go to the round results, and then we check for a winner. Because if we have a winner, we don't need to increase their position. So check for winner. Where is that? That is down here. And we're passing the position. And then we're also passing a reference to the winner variable, which is currently set to false. Okay, so we, let's see, we get ourselves into a little for loop. And we're going to stay in the loop as long as we are less than the length of position and winner is false. So what we check here while we're in this loop is if the value that is in position is greater than race end. Race end is a constant that we set way up here, and it's 100. Okay, so if at any time their position is greater than 100, basically it's going to set winner to true. It's going to put the variable or whatever, the index, into winning position so we know which one is the winner. And then it prints out, we have a winner, and then we've got continue. So it'll come up here and winner now is true. So it falls out of that and it's going to return winning position, which is the index of the reindeer who won. Okay, and you'll notice that I initialize it here to -1 because that is never going to be anything that is actually in my array. Okay, so here is where it gets set to a valid number. And that will only happen if there's a winner. And then we return. Okay, and that value that we return is stored here. And because we passed a reference to winner, when it's set to true, it is also going to be true up here. So if winner is true, and it runs through this, okay, where it gives the name of the winner, and we index in with winner number, and we show their score. Okay, and then we kind of loop through our arrays and we show the scores of all of the other reindeer. So that is my game, and you guys are going to do something similar. The only method that I didn't show you is the initial one where I add the names and the print characters. So in this one, you'll notice I have a for loop, and I just picked one of, the arrays. It could be names or print character. They're going to have the same length. And so I want to stay in here for, as many elements as there are. Enter the reindeer's name. We read that in. Read it into a temp name because I want to check it to see, to make sure they actually entered something, that they didn't do a space or that they just didn't press the enter key. Because if they did, it's invalid and they need to do it again. So they have to enter a valid name, and then I store it. Enter a print character for, and then I display the name. Read that into a temporary character. Do the same thing where I make sure that it's not null or empty or white space. And as long as they have entered something valid, then I convert it to character and I store it. Okay, and then at that time, when I've got all of the names, I've got all of the print characters, it's going to show this, and it's going to come up here, and it's actually going to print the first round, and then we get started. So you guys are going to do something similar. The requirements are here, and these are the minimal requirements. You don't have to adjust color. It's not a requirement, but it is fun. So you guys might enjoy doing that. So your requirements are here. Okay, these are the minimum requirements. You can always do more. Okay, but you need at least 2 arrays or lists. You have to have a method for adding data to the arrays and the lists. You have to make sure you validate that data. You have to have a method for repositioning the characters. You have to have a method for visually displaying the results. And now you know what that looks like. Okay. You need a method for determining the winner. And then you also need to display the results for each player and the winner. Okay. And so I kind of walked you through the code, and so does this. Okay. So if you guys have any problems with this at all, I am happy to help. I hope you have a lot of fun with this. I had fun creating my example. And again, if you have any problems or questions, please let me know.